Welcome back to Start Here with UDL. We're going to take a minute and look at a text annotation strategy. It's a great way to build learner agency through a UDL lens because students will be adding to their learning strategy toolkit. And when students own their own strategies, they can pick and choose and have some choice and voice on what they're going to use when they run into challenging text and have to get ready for complex activities. So this text annotation is pretty standard. These are the pieces that you've seen many, many times in your life, but we want to focus on the note part of annotate when you teach this. If you didn't write or record a note, you didn't annotate. So we've all had the moments when our students have grabbed their highlighters and they have painted over everything and it looks beautiful, but we weren't making a painted essay. In fact, what we were trying to do was highlight some critical features and find the evidence that we'll use for later. And instead, we have a little bit of an art project. So teaching explicitly a text annotation strategy and then modeling it and giving feedback on it, it's a really good investment for really your whole life as a student who is going to be able to get themselves started and deal with challenging text and really go back to the things that they've read and use them for something else, like a writing task or an argument or debate, or to be able to synthesize. So any of those higher order thinking skills. So you could underline your main points and circle the words you don't know. If you do circle the words you don't know, it's a great chance to use GCDC, which we have a different video on. Question mark, I had a question about this, and then maybe write what the question was. That's the annotate part. Exclamation point, this surprised me. Great chance if you're using the notice and note signposts to put in a note about what it is that surprised you. And some of this stuff is building that internal dialogue, the self-questioning techniques that we want students to have. We're going to have to model this a lot and then use some gradual release of responsibility, moving from an I do to a we do to a y'all do with some think pair, some partner work, and then eventually, after you've seen this successfully 3 times with a student, just moving it into their choice category where they can choose to use a strategy. Keep anchor charts on the wall, give them cue cards. And then this is part of their decision making when they encounter challenging text. And then, of course, the arrow for connect. This is a great chance to start modeling for students that there are different connections within a passage, but we could also draw an arrow and connect to a different passage in a text set or other documents that students are using in a history class. This could be some primary and secondary sources. You could draw an arrow and say, see other document or whatever the name of it is or the author. And now what students are doing is they're synthesizing across. But I really want you to focus on the note part, because usually the thing that frustrates teachers is students will circle or underline, but when they circle, they don't use GCDC. When they put the question, I have a question about this, they don't write the question. When they put the exclamation point, and if they're using notice and note, they're not marking what it is that has triggered them to think, oh, this is about my stance as a reader. This is the author trying to get me to believe something, and I didn't know that, or they think I knew this. And then, of course, the connections. So let's take a look and see what this is doing for us. So in the state of Virginia, we have the Developing Skilled Readers in our standards of learning. And so DSRE use reading strategies as needed to aid and monitor comprehension when encountering challenging sections of text. This is a great chance to use text annotation as a sense-making strategy. It helps you figure out some summarization. You're able to ask questions. It cues you. This is a metacognition strategy to think about GCDC maybe, and I didn't know what this word meant, so I'm going to use my context I'm going to use my context clues, or I'm going to use the word parts and maybe some roots and affixes, and then figure out what something means, because I can also use my dictionary, or I can use a peer and look it up. So these sense-making strategies all relate to each other, and text annotation, a general strategy like this, is a great place to start. But the most important part is get them away from underlining and get them into the annotation part where they're actually engaging with a text. So this is part of learner agency. From a UDL lens, we want students to be able to make decisions, but part of what we have to do along the way is we've got to introduce them to when I would use this, and then we've got to practice until it goes in a long-term memory. So it's out of my working memory, it's more muscle memory, so that I can just use my text annotation strategy as I read. And then they'll make some decisions about what to use it with. So the knowing with part. And here are some examples from our content. So in writing, this is a great chance for students to say, oh, I'm going to use my text annotation strategy when I am getting ready to find my facts or definitions or details from credible sources for writing expository texts, or my relevant evidence for persuasion. This might go well with tree if I'm going to do my thesis, my reasons, 3 or more, and my evidence, and then examining to make sure I have all my parts. Again, that's a nice chance for students to choose some strategies, fit them all together, and then they've had choice in what they're going to do, and they've still headed towards a grade level rigorous goal. Also great for reflective writing, using details and examples and evidence from the text, jumping down to organization and composition. Again, with the precise relevant evidence, we see that this is pulling quotations, examples. You would mark those with your text annotation strategy. Same thing with multimodal. You pull your relevant evidence. And then when we get into media messages, text annotation is a great way to analyze a message for facts and opinions and persuasive messages. That question, an exclamation point, making some connections. The word choice, author thought I knew this, or I was surprised at this word choice, or it really resonated with me, or it did not resonate with me. Why are they using these numbers and statistics? So if you use your notice and note signposts, they go nicely with a general text annotation strategy. And then jumping down to synthesizing, which is a very difficult skill for our students, collecting your information, then organizing it, keeping in mind that we can write ourselves questions and make connections, synthesizing, trying to figure out how we're going to put it all together using note-taking formats. Text annotation is a great way to do that. And so from a UDL lens, text annotation is a great strategy to be in your toolkit because it gives you all of those little pieces that you need to be able to pull the evidence for things that require claim evidence reasoning, which is now in all of our content areas. Thanks for hanging with us, and we hope you come back for another one.